God will work with you, but not for you. By Lao Russell.
Chapter 5. Mind Consciousness. The third stage in human unfolding is mind consciousness, which is the stage that follows sense consciousness. It is the stage represented by world geniuses. The average man considers geniuses to be specially born. They are not specially born, however. They are like other men, except that they are farther unfolded spiritually. Mind consciousness has always belonged to man since the beginning. The human race does not acquire new qualities. It reveals existent ones as it unfolds. Nothing is ever added to man from without. Whatever man becomes physically, intellectually, or spiritually unfolds from within. Even after millions of years of his unfolding, all that appears was in the first cells of his beginning. Nature does not evolve. It eternally unfolds and refolds. All idea is eternally existent. The man idea is a part of the one whole idea of creation. It is complete as idea, but its manifestation in time and space is divided into timed recordings in space. Likewise, all knowledge exists in the soul seed of all mankind. The genius discovers this fact from much aloneness, much meditation, much communion with nature. He discovers that knowledge comes in flashes of inspiration as he desires it. When he expresses his desire by inner thinking, it unfolds within his consciousness, and he recognizes it. He realizes that he has always known it. The genius knows that knowledge is limited to unchanging cause, and cannot be acquired through fleeting effects of ever-changing matter, unless translated back to cause by inner thinking. Effects of motion are observed by the senses, but the senses cannot acquire knowledge. The senses can record and repeat effects, but cannot know that which they record and repeat. Knowing, therefore, that knowledge is a quality of mind only and cannot be sensed, and also knowing that creative energy has its existence in mind only, geniuses acquire power to command material bodies from within their own consciousness. The more they become aware of their own centering consciousness, from which their knowledge and power is extended, the more they become aware of their divinity and oneness with God. Increasing God awareness gradually brings the ecstasy of the God mind, and full awareness that God is forever working with them, as they work with Him to give masterliness to their creations. Works thus created endure forever. No work of man is enduring unless created in the ecstasy of God awareness, which characterizes all geniuses. All works of man which are but the recordings and repeatings of sensed observations and memories are but transient and fleeting. God is not in them. Man's senses alone are in them. They are soulless. They do not inspire, for inspiration is not in them. Men who have reached that high state of consciousness know their destiny from early childhood. They are in full control of their destiny and would not compromise for all the wealth in the world. Once they have found the treasures of heaven within themselves, they would die penniless rather than sully their creations. To them it would be an exchange of immortality for a mirage. Every genius is aware of his exalted position as a divinely inspired messenger to those who are seeking the light. Those thousands whom he inspires are exalted to greater and still greater heights. The human race is thus enriched by each inspired messenger to man who speaks to man in God's inspired language. It is through such messengers that culture comes into the world to slowly uplift it to its higher stages. As culture increases in man, his ability to become inspired multiplies. The ascension of any man to great heights is dependent upon his ability to become re-inspired by the inspired messages brought to him by world geniuses. Mind multiplies his power to uplift mankind to higher cultural levels when he is engaged in peaceful pursuits which promote friendliness. When he is engaged in warlike pursuits and unfair business practices which promote enmities, human progress ceases. It reverses toward decadence. An increasing number of geniuses have come into the world since the beginning of the 14th century, but their number has not exceeded 100 during the 6 centuries of world progress which so suddenly ended in the year of 1914. When the world becomes decadent, it crucifies genius. Lack of recognition and patronage prevents genius from giving its priceless treasures to the world. In addition, many lose all opportunity of enriching the world by being compelled to kill men instead of serve them. The measure in which inspiration is withdrawn from men is the measure in which spiritual decadence takes whole civilizations back toward their primacy. God will work with men who desire to work with him, but he will not work for men beyond their own desire. Decadence is more conspicuous in the great masses who have not advanced to the point where they have the slightest awareness of that spiritual state of mind which inspiration is. There are countless millions of these uninspired, unillumined human units who are still deeply barbarian. There are many, many thousands, however, who have developed the inner vision and the inner ears, which inspiration unfolds in every man. These many thousands are the fruit of the few who have made them inwardly see and hear those concepts of imaginings and the voices which arise from nature's silences that are beyond the range of physical perception. These are the ones who will save the race, if it is to be saved, but their numbers are 1 to 1,000 or even less. They are the few cultured ones who love a symphony concert and would suffer at a prize fight, against the countless thousands who love the prize fight and would suffer at a symphony concert. These are the ones who are keeping the Christian spirit alive in the world by leading man in the direction of the kingdom of heaven, which man may find only through inner inspired thinking. Inner thinking men seek aloneness in the forests and far reaches in nature, away from the noises of man's activities. They thus insulate themselves from their own body desires and from all sounds which are not the rhythmic pulsations of nature. Such aloneness leads to deep meditation and silent prayer. Aloneness invites close communion with God. He who thus seeks God will find him. He will know him by seeing his light with inner vision, hearing his voice coming out of nature's silences in the rhythms of its heartbeat, and feeling the ecstasy of his love nature upon which his universe is based. In such great aloneness of man with God, all that is evil in primate man disappears into its own dark. The great masters could not possibly interpret God's rhythmic language if even the slightest trace of evil touched their thinking. Likewise, no man can listen with his soul to the rhythmic symphonies of the great masters and think evil while so listening. Herein lies the great power of music, in conserving and multiplying the Christian spirit among men. Music is the greatest of all the powers used by man to bring about the state of universal brotherhood, which is primarily essential for a Christian civilization. Painting is the next great power for inducing inspiration which leads to inner thinking. These statements are so liable to challenge by the unthinking that it is necessary to recall that painting and music such as we know them in our day were unknown until the 12th and 15th centuries respectively. The spiritual nature of either music or painting could not unfold, while the memory and love of bloodshed was so strong in the race that the greatest pleasures of its men, women, and children were gladiatorial killings and the rendings of humans by lions. Inner spiritual thinking had begun during the Hellenic Age and evidenced its effect in the beauty of architecture and sculpture. But by the time Jesus was born, there had been 400 years of decadence in which bloodshed became the greatest pleasure. While the human race was in such a primate stage, it could not comprehend God's rhythmic language. His cosmic language could only be comprehended and interpreted by those who were seeking the kingdom of heaven by inner spiritual thinking. This stage of human unfolding had never been reached until Leonardo and Raphael gave the world their interpretations of nature's rhythms in the art of painting. Perhaps it has not occurred to humanity at large that Leonardo and Raphael were the strongest force in reawakening the Christian spirit. The church of that day spoke to men in a language which had no meaning to them. They had no opportunity for comprehension, for Latin words conveyed no meaning to them whatsoever. Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and many others spoke to the people of that day in God's language of colour rhythms and forms which they did understand. Even the most lowly peasant could understand the Last Supper or the Madonna and Child interpretations of numerous followers of Leonardo. Jesus became alive and real to them. The apostles and other figures, which to them were holy, rose before their eyes and filled them with a new hope. Every home became a religious shrine. Jesus and their Blessed Virgin were in their very presence. Religious fervour rose to great heights as a reality in those days of seeming hopelessness. Paintings gave reality to their religion. The spirit of man unfolded to some extent, even though religion was more emotional and ritual than worship. Pagan legend and superstition joined their powers with ignorant man's love of the supernatural to retard its growth. Spiritual man grew, however, against even that resistance, for even religious emotionalism led to desire, and desire for closer contact with God led to prayer, and prayer induced inner thinking. The words of the spiritual teachers of that day were full of fear and evil. The spiritual words of the divine messengers who spoke to people in form, colour, and electrical rhythms had no fear or evil in them. Fear and evil have no existence in nature.